What if a simple sleepover changed everything? You thought you were just crashing at your best friend's house, but when his older brother walked in, something in the air shifted. This isn't just another night. It's a BL webtoon moment, a yaoi romance waiting to unfold, a forbidden crush, a quiet house, and a boy who realizes that the person he shouldn't want is the one he can't stop thinking about. Stay with me, because this manhwa love story is only just beginning. The story begins with Daniel, a soft-spoken, artistic boy who's always been a little shy. He spends most of his free time at his best friend's place, Ryan's house. Ryan's family has always felt like a second home to him, the kind of place where you don't have to knock before opening the fridge, where laughter drifts down the hallways late at night. But there's one person in that house who Daniel never quite knows how to act around. Ethan, Ryan's older brother. Ethan is everything Daniel isn't. Confident, athletic, a few years older with a kind of quiet charisma that makes people naturally pay attention to him. He's not the loudest person in the room, but somehow, when he's there, you notice. Daniel always thought Ethan was out of reach, a figure just beyond his world, someone who belonged to the older kids' universe. Still, Daniel remembers the little things. How Ethan once helped him carry boxes during Ryan's move. How Ethan casually asked if Daniel wanted a soda after a soccer game. Harmless, ordinary moments. Yet each left Daniel's heart racing longer than he'd ever admit. One Friday evening, Ryan invites Daniel to stay over. It's nothing unusual. They've had countless sleepovers before. But this time, Ryan leaves halfway through the night. Called away by a sudden group project with classmates. Just crash here, Ryan says casually, grabbing his jacket. Ethan's around. You'll be fine. Daniel hesitates. Alone? With Ethan? The idea makes his stomach twist. But he shrugs, trying to play it cool. After all, it's just one night. The house was strangely quiet after Ryan left. It was a silence that pressed against Daniel's ears, so different from the usual chaos that filled this place. No muffled laughter drifting from Ryan's room, no music vibrating faintly through the walls, no background chatter of a family moving about, just stillness. Daniel sat cross-legged on the edge of the bed, scrolling mindlessly through his phone. The glow of the screen was the only light in the dim room. He kept refreshing the same feed over and over, not really reading anything. His thumb moved on autopilot while his mind wandered. He couldn't shake the awareness that Ethan was somewhere inside the house. Ryan's older brother, the one person he always avoided too much eye contact with. The one person who always seemed larger than life, even when he was doing nothing at all. Daniel told himself he was being ridiculous. Ethan wasn't even in the same room. He was probably in the living room, or maybe the kitchen. And yet, Daniel's chest tightened, a faint hum of nervous energy buzzing under his skin, as if Ethan's presence radiated through the walls themselves. He tried to ignore it. He shifted on the bed, adjusting the pillow, checking the time on his phone again, still early, still too much night left to endure. And then, footsteps. They started faintly, the kind of sound you'd miss if you weren't listening for it. A floorboard creaked, then another, slow, steady, getting closer. Daniel froze, his thumb stilled against the screen, his heart skipping a beat, his breath caught in his throat. The door creaked open, and there he was. Ethan leaned casually against the frame, as if he had every right to be there. His hair was still slightly damp from a shower, dark strands clinging to his forehead. He wore sweatpants and a simple t-shirt, nothing remarkable. Yet somehow he looked untouchable, effortless, like the kind of man you only ever saw in movies or webtoons, The kind of presence that drew your eyes whether you wanted to or not. Daniel's chest tightened. "You're staying over?" Ethan asked, his voice low, casual. The kind of voice that carried no urgency, yet filled the entire room. His tone was calm, but his eyes lingered, longer than they needed to. Daniel swallowed, suddenly aware of how dry his throat felt. He nodded, forcing his voice to come out steady. Yeah. Ryan had to go." A small smirk tugged at Ethan's lips as if he wasn't surprised. Typical. He stepped into the room, slow and unhurried. Each step made the air feel heavier. Daniel shifted uncomfortably, setting his phone down, pretending like he wasn't rattled. But his pulse betrayed him, hammering in his chest. "Well," Ethan said, stopping just a few feet away, "you're not gonna just sit here alone all night, are you? Come on. I was about to watch a movie." Daniel blinked. His first instinct was to refuse, to make an excuse, say he was tired, that he just wanted to sleep. Anything to avoid being alone in a room with Ethan longer than necessary, but instead, he heard himself say, "Okay." Ethan's smirk deepened, subtle but knowing. He tilted his head toward the hallway. "Let's go." The living room was dimly lit, the only glow coming from the TV. Ethan picked up the remote and scrolled through streaming apps like he did this every night. Daniel sat stiffly on one end of the couch, his hands folded in his lap, trying to appear calm. "You always this tense?" Ethan asked without looking at him. Daniel blinked. "What?" Ethan glanced at him, one brow raised. "You're sitting like you're in an interview. Relax." Daniel forced a laugh, shifting slightly. "I just don't want to take up space." Ethan's gaze lingered for a moment longer before returning to the TV. "You should. Take up space. No one's stopping you." The words hit harder than they should have. They weren't meant to be profound, but they lodged in Daniel's chest, leaving him momentarily speechless. The movie started. Ethan settled back, sprawling comfortably, one arm draped along the back of the couch. Daniel sat on the very edge of the cushion, his knees pressed together, his eyes fixed on the screen, but not really seeing anything. He could feel Ethan beside him, the warmth radiating from his body, the faint brush of his sleeve whenever he shifted, the subtle scent of soap and something distinctly his, clean, sharp, faintly intoxicating. Daniel's heart raced. Every sense was heightened. He couldn't remember the last time he'd felt so aware of another person's nearness. Half an hour in, Ethan shifted, reaching for the bowl of popcorn between them. Daniel reached at the same time. Their hands collided. Time slowed. Daniel froze, his fingers pressed against Ethan's. He should have pulled away instantly, should have laughed it off, but he didn't. Neither did Ethan. Their eyes met. Ethan's gaze was steady, unreadable, but not dismissive. He didn't look away. His thumb grazed Daniel's knuckles, deliberately slow. Daniel's breath caught. The moment stretched, heavy, charged. Finally, Ethan withdrew his hand, taking a few kernels with him. But his eyes lingered a second longer, as if to say the silence between them wasn't empty at all. Daniel forced himself to breathe. He stared back at the screen, but the movie was meaningless now. All he could think about was the heat of that touch, the look in Ethan's eyes, the possibility hanging in the air. Minutes passed in a blur. The tension only grew. When the credits rolled, Ethan stretched, his arm brushing Daniel's shoulder. "Guess that's it." Daniel nodded, his voice caught in his throat. "Yeah. You heading to bed?" Ethan asked, standing. Daniel hesitated. Yeah, probably." But as he started toward Ryan's room, Ethan's voice stopped him. "You don't have to stay in there, you know." Daniel turned, confused. "What do you mean?" Ethan tilted his head toward his own room. His voice was calm, but his eyes were steady, intent. Mine's bigger. And, I don't know, feels weird letting you sleep alone. Daniel's heart pounded. Every nerve screamed that this was a bad idea, that nothing good could come from walking into Ethan's room, but his feet moved anyway. Inside Ethan's room, the air felt different, darker, quieter. Daniel sat awkwardly on the edge of the bed while Ethan moved around casually, setting his phone on the nightstand, pulling on a hoodie. Then Ethan sat beside him, close enough that their knees brushed. Silence stretched. Finally, Ethan broke it. His voice was low, deliberate. "You know, I've noticed the way you look at me." Daniel froze. Heat flooded his face. I don't. Ethan leaned in slightly, his hand brushing Daniel's. "Don't. You don't have to lie." Daniel's breath hitched. "I didn't mean." "It's okay." Ethan's voice was gentle, almost a whisper. "Because I look at you too." Daniel's world tilted. He couldn't process it, couldn't believe it. His chest tightened, his throat dry, and then Ethan kissed him. It was slow, careful, not a teasing brush, not rushed or careless, a kiss that felt deliberate, certain, like a secret finally spoken aloud. Daniel's hands trembled as they gripped Ethan's hoodie. His eyes fluttered shut. The world outside disappeared. The house, Ryan, everything. It all faded, leaving only this moment. When they broke apart, Ethan rested his forehead against Daniel's, his voice barely above a whisper. "Stay." And Daniel didn't think twice. Daniel nods quickly. Yeah, Ryan. Had to go." Ethan smirks. "Typical." He steps closer, his presence filling the room. "Well, you're not going to just sit here alone, are you? Come on. I was about to watch a movie." Daniel follows him to the living room, trying to ignore how his pulse hammers with every step. They settle onto the couch. Ethan sits comfortably, sprawling with the ease of someone who owns the space. Daniel perches on the edge, clutching a cushion like it's armor. Halfway through the movie, Ethan glances at him. "You always this stiff?" Daniel forces a laugh. "I just don't want to take up space." Ethan leans closer, voice dropping. "You should take up space. No one's stopping you." The words aren't teasing. They're gentle, almost coaxing. Daniel doesn't know what to say. The movie played on, flickering light, painting shadows across the living room. The dialogue and soundtrack filled the silence, but for Daniel, every sound seemed muted, distant. His attention wasn't on the screen. Not really. It was on the awareness of the boy beside him. Ethan. He sat so casually, as if the world had no weight. One arm rested against the back of the couch, his body leaning slightly into the cushions. He didn't even have to try, and somehow the space bent toward him, like he owned it. Daniel sat stiffly at first, knees pressed together, back straight. But as the minutes ticked by, the distance between them shrank. Not physically, not at first. It was in the way Daniel became hyper-aware of every detail. Ethan shifting, his shirt stretching across his chest, the faint scent of soap lingering after his shower, the sound of his breath steady and unhurried. The space felt charged, as if the air itself was waiting for something. Daniel tried to keep his eyes on the TV. He even laughed once or twice at a scene, though he couldn't have repeated a single line of dialogue if asked. Every movement beside him pulled at his focus. Then it happened. Ethan shifted again, settling deeper into the couch, draping one arm along the backrest. It was casual, nothing unusual. The kind of movement people made 1,000 times without thinking. But to Daniel, it was monumental, because that arm was close, too close. The warmth radiated from Ethan's body, seeping into Daniel's skin. Their shoulders brushed just barely, but it was enough to make his heart stumble, enough to make his breath falter. He told himself it was nothing. Just proximity. Just physics. He didn't move away. Couldn't. His entire body was alive with the tension of it, every nerve straining toward that warmth, even as his mind screamed at him to stay still. The movie played on. Daniel forced his hands to stay folded in his lap, but his stomach twisted, his chest tight. He could feel Ethan's presence like a gravitational pull. And then, popcorn. The bowl sat innocently between them, half empty, a bridge neither had crossed in some time. Daniel reached for it without thinking, his hand moving automatically, desperate for some kind of distraction. At the exact same moment, Ethan reached too. Their hands collided. Time slowed. The jolt was small, barely a brush of fingers, but Daniel felt it like lightning through his veins. His breath caught in his throat. His skin burned where Ethan's hand pressed against his, warm and steady. He froze. Everything in him screamed to pull back, to laugh it off, to pretend it was nothing. But his body betrayed him. His hand lingered. And then, so did Ethan's. Neither of them moved. The popcorn bowl was forgotten. The screen flickered with images Daniel couldn't comprehend, sound filling the silence neither of them dared to break. Their hands rested together, palms grazing fingers awkwardly tangled over the rim of the bowl. Daniel's heart thundered. He was sure Ethan could hear it. His chest ached with the weight of it, the terrifying possibility of what this meant. Finally, Daniel dared to look up, and Ethan was already watching him. The world narrowed to that gaze, steady, unreadable, but not cold, not dismissive. Ethan's eyes lingered, searching, as if waiting for Daniel to flinch, to pull away, to deny the spark that had ignited between them. Daniel didn't move, couldn't. His throat was dry, his breath shallow, but his hand stayed where it was, pressed against Ethan's. Ethan's thumb shifted, barely, just the smallest brush across Daniel's knuckles, deliberate, testing. Daniel's stomach flipped. Heat surged through him. His lips parted, but no words came. It was nothing, just a touch, a fleeting thing. But it was everything. The moment stretched, suspended, heavy with all the things neither of them said. Finally, Ethan pulled his hand back, slowly, deliberately. He grabbed a few kernels and leaned back against the couch as if nothing had happened. But the corner of his mouth tugged upward, the faintest shadow of a smirk. Daniel sat frozen, his hand still hovering uselessly over the bowl, his skin burning where Ethan had touched him. His mind spun with questions he couldn't voice. Did Ethan mean it? Did he feel it, too? Or was Daniel imagining everything, building castles out of sand, mistaking casualness for something more? He withdrew his hand, clutching it against his chest, as if it might still hold the echo of Ethan's warmth. The movie blurred before him. He couldn't hear it anymore. All he could hear was the thundering of his own heartbeat, the rush of blood in his ears, and Ethan's quiet chuckle. "Careful," Ethan said, his voice low, almost amused. "You'll spill it." Daniel swallowed hard. "Sorry." His voice cracked, thin and fragile. But Ethan just shook his head, eyes still on the screen. Nothing to be sorry for. The words were simple, meaningless maybe, but Daniel heard them differently, as if there was something beneath them. As if Ethan wasn't just talking about popcorn. He sank deeper into the couch, trying to calm his racing thoughts, but every time Ethan shifted, every time his sleeve brushed Daniel's arm, the tension flared again, undeniable, impossible to ignore. The movie ended eventually. Daniel barely noticed. The credits rolled, the room bathed in soft blue light. Ethan stretched casual, effortless, as if nothing unusual had happened at all. But Daniel knew better. Something had shifted. Something had begun. And he couldn't take it back. Neither pulls away immediately. Their eyes meet. Daniel's breath catches. Ethan studies him, gaze steady, unreadable. Then slowly he withdraws his hand, but not before his thumb grazes Daniel's knuckles. The air changes. It's heavier, charged. "Ethan," Daniel begins, unsure, his voice almost a whisper. The silence between them wasn't empty. It pulsed. Daniel stood in the hallway, bag slung over one shoulder, mind buzzing with all the tiny moments that had led to this. Every brush of fingers in the kitchen, every half smile across the couch, every laugh that seemed to stretch just a beat too long. His chest still ached from holding everything in, from pretending those glances meant nothing. He was halfway to Ryan's room when Ethan's voice cut through the air, low and steady. "You don't have to stay in there, you know." Daniel froze. The words were simple, but the weight of them lodged deep inside him. Slowly, carefully, he turned. Ethan leaned against the wall, casual in his posture, one hand hooked loosely into the pocket of his sweatpants. His damp hair was already beginning to dry, curling slightly at the ends. The t-shirt he wore clung to him in places, hanging loose in others, making him look both effortless and unbearably close. The way he looked at Daniel wasn't casual, though. There was something deliberate in it, something Daniel couldn't name, but felt down to his bones. His throat tightened. He wanted to speak, to laugh it off, to say something harmless like, "No, it's fine. I'll stay in Ryan's room." That was safe, predictable. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, he just stared. Ethan tilted his head, watching him with an expression Daniel couldn't quite decipher. "Unless you actually want to," he added, softer this time, almost teasing. "But I figured maybe you'd rather not." The implication hung heavy in the air. Daniel's heart thundered. What is he saying? What does he mean? He opened his mouth, closed it again. His fingers dug into the strap of his bag. Ethan pushed off the wall with a quiet exhale, stepping closer. The hallway was narrow, shadows from the dim ceiling light painting lines across his face. His presence filled the space, warm and steady, and Daniel felt pinned, not by force, but by gravity. "You've looked uncomfortable all night," Ethan said, not accusing, just noticing. You laugh, you smile, but then you get quiet, like you're holding your breath. Daniel swallowed hard. He hadn't realized he was that transparent. Ethan's voice softened, almost hesitant now. "I don't want you to feel like you have to force yourself here. Not around me." The sincerity cut deeper than any teasing could have. Daniel shifted, his back brushing against the wall, the strap of his bag sliding slightly down his arm. His voice came out smaller than he intended. "I'm not forcing myself." "No." Ethan stepped a little closer, not enough to crowd him, but enough that the air thickened. "Because it feels like you are." Daniel's breath hitched. His mind scrambled for something to say, some safe ground to retreat to, but all he found was the truth pressing against his ribs, demanding to be let out. He stopped, shook his head. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do." Ethan's gaze softened, but he didn't look away. "There's no rule book, Daniel. You don't have to do anything." That should have been comforting. It wasn't. If anything, it made the ache sharper. Because the problem wasn't what he had to do. It was what he wanted to do. The memory of their hands brushing over the popcorn bowl flared back bright and searing. The way Ethan's thumb had grazed his knuckles, deliberate and unhurried. The silent smirk afterward. The question that had been lingering all night, "What are we doing?" Ethan took another step forward. His voice dropped lower, rougher. But if you don't want to sleep in Ryan's room, you don't have to. Daniel's chest tightened. The implication was clear now. Not spelled out, not explicit, but real enough to make his pulse race. For a long moment, he said nothing. The hallway buzzed with silence, broken only by the faint hum of the fridge in the kitchen, the ticking of the clock in the living room. He could feel the weight of the choice pressing down on him. Stay safe. Walk into Ryan's room, close the door, pretend nothing had happened, or step forward, cross that invisible line. Ethan. His voice trembled. Ethan's eyes searched his face, steady, but unrelenting. Yeah. Daniel hesitated. The words tangled in his throat, but his body betrayed him, because even as his mind screamed caution, his feet shifted, just half a step forward, just enough to close part of the distance between them. Ethan noticed. His breath caught, barely audible, but Daniel heard it. Felt it. You don't have to explain, Ethan said quietly, almost a whisper. Not now. Not tonight. The relief in those words was staggering. Daniel's chest loosened, though his heart still hammered. He nodded, small and uncertain. His hand slipped off the bag strap, fingers curling against his side. Ethan smiled faintly. Not wide, not cocky, but something softer, more intimate. Come on. He turned, not waiting for Daniel to answer, and walked back toward the living room. The easy sway of his shoulders, the relaxed pace. It was as if he knew Daniel would follow. And Daniel did. Not because he had to, because he wanted to. The night unfolded in fragments after that. Not the kind you could neatly string together like beads, but scattered, glowing moments that burned brighter than anything Daniel had known before. Standing too close in the kitchen while searching for a midnight snack. Brushing past each other, shoulders grazing, the electricity sparking fresh every time. A shared laugh over something stupid on TV, their eyes locking too long afterward, the silence afterward speaking louder than words ever could. It was maddening, beautiful, terrifying. Neither of them said it out loud, not yet. But the question remained, always hovering in the charged air between them. What are we doing? When the night finally grew heavy, Daniel found himself at the threshold of Ryan's room again. He lingered, hand on the doorknob, staring at the familiar emptiness inside. Behind him, Ethan's voice cut through the quiet once more. You sure you want to stay in there? Daniel's hand slipped from the doorknob. He turned, heart pounding, and met Ethan's gaze, and this time he didn't hesitate. Daniel blinks. What? Ethan tilts his head toward his own room. Mine's bigger, and I don't know. It just feels weird letting you sleep alone. Daniel hesitates, every nerve in his body screaming. But he follows. Ethan's room is darker, quieter. Daniel sits awkwardly on the edge of the bed, while Ethan moves around, pulling on a hoodie, setting his phone down. Finally, Ethan sits beside him. For a moment, silence, only the sound of their breathing. Then Ethan speaks, voice low. You know, I've noticed the way you look at me. Daniel's chest tightens. Panic. Embarrassment. He opens his mouth to deny it, but Ethan gently places a hand over his. Don't, Ethan says softly. You don't have to lie. Daniel's heart races. I didn't mean. Ethan leans closer. It's okay. Because I look at you too. The words hit harder than anything. Daniel stares, unable to believe it, and then Ethan kisses him. It's not rushed, not careless. It's slow, deliberate. The kind of kiss that feels like a secret being spoken aloud for the first time. Daniel melts into it, his hand trembling as it grips Ethan's hoodie. The world outside disappears, the quiet house, Ryan's absence, everything. All that exists is this moment. When they finally break apart, Ethan rests his forehead against Daniel's. Stay, he whispers. Daniel doesn't think twice. 5. Resolution, reflection, 150 words. Morning light filters through the curtains. Daniel wakes to find Ethan still beside him, one arm draped protectively across his waist. For the first time, Daniel feels at peace. It's not about labels, not about what's expected. It's about the way Ethan made him feel seen, safe, wanted. Later, Ryan would tease him. Later, the world might complicate things. But in this moment, the story is theirs. A reminder that sometimes the person you were never supposed to fall for is the one your heart chooses anyway. So, what do you think? Sweet, emotional, or maybe a little heartbreaking? Comment below with your reaction. Sweet, cute, or emotional? Don't forget to hit subscribe for more BL story breakdowns, yaoi manhwa summaries, and romance webtoon moments. Check the description for full story links and even more BL recommendations you'll love.